My family hurt my daughter and expected silence. I took her to the hospital, pressed charges, and their perfect lives crumbled. Now they're begging for mercy they never showed her. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. My family hurt my daughter and expected silence. I took her to the hospital, pressed charges, and their perfect lives crumbled. Now they're begging for mercy they never showed her. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 32 years old, and until 3 months ago, I believed family meant protection. I believed blood ties created an unbreakable bond of loyalty and care. I was wrong. The spring sunshine poured through the windows of my in-laws' estate that Saturday afternoon, creating the perfect backdrop for what should have been a joyful celebration. My daughter Emma, just 3 years old, wore her favorite yellow dress with white flowers. Her blonde curls bounced as she ran through the manicured gardens, laughing with pure joy. I remember thinking how perfect the moment seemed, how deceiving appearances can be. The Mitchell family gathering was in full swing. My mother-in-law, Patricia Mitchell, had organized the event with her usual meticulous attention to detail. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, catered food from the most expensive restaurant in town, everything designed to showcase the family's status and success. 50 guests milled about the sprawling backyard, most of them business associates of my father-in-law, Robert Mitchell, a prominent real estate developer whose face regularly appeared in the local business journals. My husband Daniel stood near the bar with his younger brother Marcus, both nursing expensive whiskeys and discussing some investment opportunity. Daniel's sister, Victoria, held court near the pool with a cluster of her socialite friends, her laughter carrying across the lawn. Everyone was having a wonderful time. Everyone was performing their role in the perfect Mitchell family tableau. I was helping Emma navigate the stone path toward the dessert table when Patricia's voice cut through the ambient chatter. "Sarah, darling, do come join us. Leave Emma with the other children. She's perfectly fine." The other children Patricia referred to were Marcus's twin boys, 7-year-old demons named Brandon and Brett, who had already broken 2 decorative vases and terrorized the catering staff. But Patricia adored her grandsons, called their destructive behavior spirited and adventurous. Emma, by contrast, was always too quiet, too shy, too sensitive for Patricia's taste. "I'll be right there, Patricia," I called back, holding Emma's small hand as we reached the dessert table. "Let me just get Emma settled. She's 3 years old, Sarah. She doesn't need constant hovering." Patricia's tone carried that edge I'd learned to recognize over 5 years of marriage to her son, that particular sharpness that questioned my parenting while maintaining plausible deniability. I kissed the top of Emma's head. "Sweetie, Mommy will be right over there, okay? You can see me the whole time." Emma nodded, already reaching for a small cookie from the carefully arranged display. Her blue eyes, so like mine, sparkled with innocent happiness. I had no way of knowing that within 20 minutes, everything would change forever. I joined Patricia and her circle of friends near the rose garden. They were discussing their upcoming charity gala, a topic that held zero interest for me, but required my polite attention. Patricia's best friend, Eleanor, was explaining seating arrangements when a child's scream pierced the air. Not just any scream, Emma's scream. A mother knows her child's voice in any crowd, in any circumstance. That particular cry of terror and pain shot through me like electricity. I turned to see Marcus's twin boys standing over Emma near the pool area. Emma was on the ground, her yellow dress muddy, blood streaming from her nose. Brandon held a long stick in his hand, grinning. Brett was laughing. I ran. The distance between the rose garden and the pool felt infinite. My heart hammered against my ribs as I dropped to my knees beside my daughter. Blood covered her face, her dress, her small hands as she reached for me. "Mommy," she sobbed, a word barely intelligible through her crying and the blood in her mouth. "Emma, baby, I'm here. Mommy's here." I pulled her into my arms, trying to assess the damage while my hands shook. Her nose was clearly broken, blood flowing steadily, but there was something else. The way she held her left arm, the odd angle of her wrist. "What happened?" I demanded, looking up at Brandon and Brett. Neither boy showed a trace of remorse. "We were just playing," Brandon said with that practiced innocence that fooled most adults. "She fell," Brett added, the lie smooth and coordinated. "Liar." The word escaped my lips before I could stop it. I could see the stick in Brandon's hand, could see the defensive wound on Emma's forearm where she'd tried to protect her face. By now, a crowd had gathered. Daniel pushed through, his face flushed from the whiskey and summer heat. "What's going on?" "Your nephews attacked Emma," I said, my voice shaking with rage and fear. "Look at her face. Look at her arm." Marcus appeared beside his sons, immediately going into protective mode. "Boys, what happened?" "She fell, Dad," Brandon repeated. "We told her not to run near the pool." "That's not what happened," I insisted, standing with Emma in my arms. She was still crying, blood soaking into my white blouse. "They hit her with that stick. Look at the defensive wounds on her arm." Patricia materialized beside Marcus, her expression cold and calculating. "Sarah, you're being hysterical. Children play rough sometimes. Emma probably just got in the way." "Got in the way?" My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. "She has a broken nose and possibly a broken wrist. This wasn't play." Robert Mitchell joined the growing circle, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Let's all calm down. I'm sure this is just an unfortunate accident." "It wasn't an accident," I said, my jaw tight. "Your grandsons deliberately hurt Emma." "That's a serious accusation, Sarah," Robert said, his tone carrying a warning. "Children have accidents. Making wild claims about intentional harm is irresponsible." Daniel finally spoke up, but not in the way I needed. "Maybe we should clean Emma up and see if it's really as bad as it looks. Blood can make things seem worse than they are." I stared at my husband in disbelief. "As bad as it looks? Daniel, her nose is broken. Look at her wrist." "Accidents happen," he said, echoing his father's words. "Let's not not make a scene in front of everyone. A scene. That's what mattered to him. Not our daughter's injuries, not the truth. The scene. Patricia moved closer, lowering her voice to that dangerous whisper she used when delivering ultimatums. Sarah, you're understandably upset, but making accusations against Brandon and Brett would be very unfortunate for everyone. These things happen with children. Emma will be fine. Let's not blow this out of proportion and ruin a lovely day. The implied threat hung in the air between us. Ruin the day, ruin the family harmony, ruin my position in the Mitchell family by insisting on the truth. She needs a hospital, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Now. Oh, for heaven's sake, Victoria chimed in from behind me. It's probably just a bloody nose. You're being dramatic, Sarah. You always are. I turned slowly, Emma still in my arms, blood still flowing from her broken nose. 50 pairs of eyes watched us. The Mitchell family and their society friends. The witnesses who would later claim they saw nothing, heard nothing, knew nothing. I'm taking my daughter to the emergency room, I said clearly. Anyone who tries to stop me will regret it. Daniel grabbed my arm. Sarah, wait. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Move your hand, Daniel. You're embarrassing me, he hissed. Embarrassing the whole family. Something crystallized in that moment. The hierarchy of values in the Mitchell family had never been clearer. Reputation first, image first, status first, truth last, my daughter last. Emma's crying, Daniel. She's bleeding, and you're worried about embarrassment. I pulled my arm from his grip. Get out of my way. Patricia stepped forward, her voice sharp with authority. If you take Emma to a hospital making these ridiculous accusations, you'll be creating a very difficult situation for yourself, Sarah. Think carefully about what you're doing. I looked at her for a long moment, at this woman who had never fully accepted me into her family, who had questioned my background, my education, my worthiness to marry her son, who was now threatening me to protect her golden grandsons. I am thinking carefully, I said. I'm thinking about what kind of mother I want to be, and I'm thinking about what I'm teaching Emma about standing up for herself. I started walking toward the house, toward the front door, toward my car. Daniel followed, still trying to reason with me, to convince me to stay, to smooth things over, to let it go. Sarah, please, can't we just clean her up here? Maybe call our family doctor? He can come to the house. So, there's no official record? I asked without stopping. So no one asks difficult questions? You're making this into something it's not, he insisted. It was an accident. I reached my car, a modest sedan that looked out of place among the luxury vehicles in the Mitchell driveway. I strapped Emma into her car seat as gently as possible while she whimpered in pain. Her wrist was swelling badly now, the skin already turning dark purple. Daniel stood by the open driver's door. If you do this, if you make a big deal out of this, there will be consequences, Sarah. My family doesn't take kindly to being accused of covering things up. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. 5 years of marriage and I was seeing him clearly for the first time. The man I'd loved, the man I'd chosen to build a life with, was willing to sacrifice our daughter's well-being for his family's reputation. Watch me, I said, starting the engine. As I drove away from the Mitchell estate, I could see them in my rearview mirror, a cluster of people standing in the driveway, watching me leave. Daniel with his hands in his pockets, Patricia with her arms crossed, Marcus with his hands on his son's shoulders, all of them united in their certainty that I was being unreasonable, dramatic, hysterical. They had no idea what I was about to do, no idea that their perfect family image was about to shatter in ways they couldn't imagine. Emma whimpered from the back seat. Hurts, Mommy. I know, baby. We're almost there. Mommy's going to make sure you're okay. But I was going to do more than that. I was going to make sure that what happened today had consequences. Real consequences. The kind that Patricia's threats and Robert's money and the Mitchell family's status couldn't make disappear. I pulled into the emergency room entrance, my white blouse covered in Emma's blood, my hands still shaking with rage and adrenaline, but my mind was clear, crystal clear. This was the moment that would define what kind of mother I was, what kind of person I was, whether I would choose silence and compliance or truth and protection. I chose my daughter. I would always choose my daughter. And the Mitchell family was about to learn that some things matter more than reputation. Some things matter more than image. Some things matter more than keeping up appearances, justice, truth, and a mother's love. They hurt my child. They expected me to stay silent. Instead, I took her to the hospital, pressed charges, and ended their perfect lives. This is how it happened. The emergency room nurse took one look at Emma and immediately called for a doctor. Within minutes, we were in a private examination room. Emma sat on the paper-covered table, still crying softly, her blood-soaked yellow dress a stark contrast to the sterile white walls. Dr. Rachel Chen, a pediatric emergency physician, entered with gentle efficiency. She knelt to Emma's level, her voice soft and reassuring. Hi there, sweetheart. My name is Dr. Chen. I'm going to help make you feel better, okay? Emma nodded, clutching my hand with her uninjured right hand. The swelling in her left wrist had gotten worse during the drive, the bruising spreading up her forearm in angry purple and black patterns. Dr. Chen carefully examined Emma's injuries, her professional expression gradually hardening as she documented each wound: the broken nose, the fractured wrist, the defensive bruising on Emma's forearms, the scratches and contusions. She took photographs, making notes on her tablet with increasing precision. Mrs. Mitchell, she said, turning to me with careful neutrality, can you tell me exactly how these injuries occurred? I took a deep breath. This was the moment when I either protected my daughter or protected my husband's family. There was no middle ground. My daughter was deliberately attacked by her cousins at a family gathering. They hit her multiple times with a stick. When she tried to protect herself, they broke her wrist. Her nose was broken when they struck her face directly. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Recognition. She'd heard stories like this before. And where were the adults when this happened? I was about 30 feet away. The attack lasted less than a minute. By the time I reached her, the damage was done. Did anyone else witness what happened? About 50 people saw the aftermath, but the family is claiming it was an accident, that Emma fell while playing. Dr. Chen made more notes. These injuries are not consistent with a fall. The pattern of bruising, the defensive wounds, the multiple impact sites, this is consistent with being struck repeatedly. My phone buzzed. Daniel calling. I ignored it. It buzzed again. A text from Patricia. Sarah, we need to talk before you do something you'll regret. The threat was clear, but so was my path forward. Doctor, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I want everything documented. Every injury, every photograph, every medical finding, and I want to speak with someone about pressing charges. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. I'm required by law to report suspected child abuse. Given the nature and pattern of these injuries and your statement that this was a deliberate attack, I'll be contacting Child Protective Services and the police. The words hung in the air. Child abuse. Police. CPS. The machinery of justice beginning to turn. Unstoppable once set in motion. My phone rang again. Daniel. Then Victoria. Then a number I didn't recognize. Probably Robert calling from his office line. They were mobilizing, trying to control the situation, to spin the narrative before it escaped their grasp. Too late. A nurse came in to take Emma for x-rays. As they wheeled her away, Emma looked back at me with frightened eyes. Mommy, I'm right here, baby. I'll be waiting when you get back. Alone in the examination room, I finally let myself shake. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a rage so profound it felt like nausea. My phone continued to buzz with increasingly frantic messages. Daniel, Sarah, please call me. We can work this out. Patricia, you're making a terrible mistake. Think about what you're doing to this family. Victoria, how dare you accuse Brandon and Brett? They're just children. Marcus, my sons said Emma was being rough and they were defending themselves. You need to get your story straight. The lies were already forming. The narrative was being constructed. Poor innocent Brandon and Brett just defending themselves from aggressive little Emma. The Mitchell family, victims of a hysterical mother's false accusations, but they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed I would be alone, that I would be isolated, that I wouldn't have anyone on my side. They didn't know about my sister, Jessica, a social worker with 15 years of experience in child protective services. They didn't know about my college roommate, Amy, now a family law attorney. They didn't know about the network of protective mothers I'd quietly built over 3 years of playgroups and preschool meetings. I made my first call to Jessica. She answered immediately, her voice sharp with concern. Sarah, what's wrong? I told her everything. The attack, the family's reaction, the threats, the attempt to prevent me from seeking medical care. As I spoke, I could hear her making notes, her professional training kicking in. You did exactly the right thing, she said when I finished. Don't back down. Don't let them pressure you. The medical documentation is crucial. Make sure they photograph everything. And Sarah, document every call, every text, every attempt they make to contact you. It's all evidence of their attempt to cover this up. My second call was to Amy. She answered from her car, already in attorney mode before I finished explaining. Don't talk to any of them without me present. Not Daniel, not his parents, not anyone. Every communication from this point forward goes through me. I'm coming to the hospital now. Amy, you're 2 hours away. Then I'll be there in 90 minutes. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't let them bully you into backing down. Dr. Chen returned as I was ending the call. Emma was still in x-rays, but the doctor wanted to update me on the findings so far. The wrist fracture is significant. She'll need a cast for at least 6 weeks, possibly longer. The nose is broken, but should heal without surgery. The bruising will fade, but the psychological trauma concerns me. Has Emma ever been violent or aggressive toward other children? Never. She's the gentlest child I know. She cries when we have to remove spiders from the house. Dr. Chen nodded. That's what I thought. The defensive wounds tell a clear story. She was trying to protect herself, not attacking. A police officer arrived, a woman in her 40s named Officer Linda Morrison. She had kind eyes, but a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. This was someone who wouldn't be swayed by the Mitchell family's status or money. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Officer Morrison. Dr. Chen called me about a possible assault on your daughter. I need to get a statement from you. I went through the story again, more detailed this time. The party, Emma's scream, the stick in Brandon's hand, Brett's laughter, the family's immediate rush to cover it up, Patricia's threats, Daniel's ultimatum in the driveway. Officer Morrison took notes, her expression growing grimmer with each detail. And your husband supported his family's version of events? He told me there would be consequences if I made a big deal out of this. He wanted me to let their family doctor examine Emma at the house instead of bringing her to the hospital, to avoid an official record. Exactly. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask you something directly. Do you feel safe going home? The question stopped me cold. Did I feel safe? My husband had chosen his family over our daughter, had threatened me with consequences for protecting her, had stood by while his mother explicitly warned me against seeking medical care. No, I said quietly. I don't. Officer Morrison made another note. Do you have somewhere else you can stay? Family? Friends? My sister lives about 20 minutes from here. She's expecting us. Good. I'm going to need to interview the other children who were present, Brandon and Brett. I'll also need statements from any other witnesses. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a number I recognized as Eleanor, Patricia's best friend who had been at the party. Sarah, I saw what happened. Those boys deliberately hurt Emma. If you need someone to tell the truth, I will. I showed the message to Officer Morrison. She photographed it with her phone. Forward that to me. And Mrs. Mitchell, document everything. Every call, every text, every threat. It's all evidence. Emma returned from x-rays, her small face tear-stained but calmer. They'd given her something for the pain. A pediatric orthopedist came to set her wrist, explaining that the break was clean but would require careful monitoring. As they applied the bright pink cast Emma had chosen, again. My daughter looked up at me with those trusting blue eyes. Mommy, are Brandon and Brett going to hurt me again? The question broke something in me. The fear in her voice, the acceptance that she might be hurt again, that this might not be over. No, baby, I said, my voice fierce with a protective rage I'd never felt before. No one is ever going to hurt you again. Mommy promises. Dr. Chen finished her examination and handed me a folder thick with documentation. These are copies of all the medical records, photographs, and my official report. Keep them somewhere safe. The hospital will forward everything to CPS and the police as required, but you should have your own copies. Officer Morrison added her business card to the folder. I'll be in touch soon about next steps. In the meantime, if anyone from the Mitchell family contacts you in a threatening way, call me immediately. As Emma and I prepared to leave the hospital, my phone rang again. This time it was Daniel, and something told me I should answer. I put it on speaker with Officer Morrison present. Sarah, where are you? Mom says you took Emma to the hospital and started making crazy accusations. You need to come back so we can discuss this like adults. Like adults? My voice was ice. The way you discussed it when you told me there would be consequences for protecting our daughter. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Look, the boys said Emma was being rough with them. They were just defending themselves. Kids get hurt sometimes. It's not a big deal. Emma has a broken nose, a fractured wrist, and defensive wounds all over her arms. But you're right, Daniel. It's not a big deal. It's a criminal case. Silence on the other end. When Daniel spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder, more desperate. Sarah, don't do this. Please. Think about what you're doing to our family. I am thinking about our family. Our daughter is our family, and she comes first. My mother wants to speak with you. Tell your mother that all communication from this point forward goes through my attorney, Amy Bradshaw. You remember her, right? My college roommate who specializes in family law and child protective services cases? Another pause. You hired an attorney? I'm protecting my daughter. Something you should have done. I ended the call. Officer Morrison was nodding approvingly. Well handled. Keep that same energy. They're going to try to wear you down, make you feel guilty, paint you as the unreasonable one. Don't fall for it. Jessica was waiting in the hospital parking lot when we emerged. She took one look at Emma's cast, her swollen face, and her tear-stained cheeks, and her expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. My gentle, compassionate sister transformed into a warrior. Let's get you both out of here, she said, helping Emma into her car. I've got the guest room ready. And Sarah, I made some calls. You've got people on your side, more than you know. As we drove away from the hospital, I watched the building recede in the side mirror. This was the point of no return. The moment when everything changed irrevocably. The Mitchell family's perfect image was about to shatter, and I was holding the hammer. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from Robert Mitchell himself. Sarah, I'm willing to cover all of Emma's medical expenses and more to make this situation go away quietly. Name your price. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Officer Morrison and Amy. Attempted bribery, obstruction of justice, evidence of consciousness of guilt. The Mitchell family had built their empire on appearances, on the careful management of their reputation, on the belief that money and status could smooth over any problem. They were about to learn that some things can't be bought, some things can't be smoothed over, some wounds can't be hidden. Justice was coming, and it had teeth. Jessica's house became our sanctuary. The guest room had soft lavender walls and a window overlooking her garden. Emma fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from pain medication and emotional trauma. I sat beside her bed, watching her chest rise and fall, the pink cast on her small arm, a harsh reminder of why we were here. My phone continued its relentless buzzing. 23 missed calls from the Mitchell family, 47 text messages, 3 voicemails from Patricia, each one progressively more threatening. But there was also an unexpected message from Eleanor, Patricia's friend who had witnessed the attack. Sarah, I can't stop thinking about what I saw today. Patricia called and told me to say Emma fell if anyone asks. I told her no. My conscience won't let me lie about child abuse. I'm sorry I didn't speak up immediately. If you need my statement, you have it. I forwarded the message to Officer Morrison and Amy. Eleanor's testimony would be crucial. She was part of the Mitchell family's inner circle, someone with no reason to lie, someone whose word carried weight in their social circles. Jessica appeared in the doorway with chamomile tea. She sat beside me, her presence steady and comforting. How are you holding up? I keep replaying it in my head. Emma's scream, the blood, the way they all just stood there, more worried about their image than her pain. That's trauma, Jessica said gently. What you witnessed today was your family betrayal in its purest form. The people who should have protected Emma chose to protect themselves instead. Daniel chose them over us. Yes, and now you know exactly where you stand. My phone rang. Amy, calling from the road. Sarah, I'm about 40 minutes out, but I need to tell you something. Robert Mitchell's attorney called me. Lawrence Blackwood. Expensive, connected, ruthless. He wants to set up a meeting to discuss an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? The kind where they pay you a substantial sum to drop everything and sign an NDA. He mentioned a figure of $500,000. I felt sick. They think they can buy their way out of this. They think they can buy their way out of everything. That's how people like the Mitchells operate. They've probably done it before. How many other incidents have been swept under the rug with money and threats? The thought chilled me. How many other children had Brandon and Brett hurt? How many other situations had the Mitchell family paid to disappear? Tell him no. Tell him we're not interested in any arrangement. That's what I figured. But Sarah, you need to understand what you're up against. The Mitchells have resources, connections. They'll hire investigators to dig into your past. They'll try to paint you as unstable, as a vindictive ex-wife trying to destroy them. They'll make your life very difficult. Let them try. I have the truth. I have medical documentation. I have witnesses. Good. Hold on to that certainty. You're going to need it. After After Amy hung up, I opened my laptop. Jessica had been right about having people on my side. My phone showed text messages from other mothers whose children attended preschool with Emma. Women I'd shared playdates and coffee with. Women who knew Emma's gentle nature. Karen, I heard what happened. If you need anything, I'm here. And Sarah? Brandon and Brett scared my daughter at the park last month. She wouldn't tell me why until tonight. They threatened to hurt her if she told. I'm documenting everything. Michelle, those boys pushed my son off the slide 6 months ago. The Mitchell family convinced me it was an accident. I'm so sorry I didn't speak up. I'll testify if you need me to. Rachel, my daughter said Brandon and Brett are mean and hurt other kids. I brushed it off as kid drama. I was wrong. Count me in for whatever you need. The pattern was becoming clear. This wasn't an isolated incident. Brandon and Brett had a history of violence, and the Mitchell family had been covering it up for years, using their status and money to silence victims. I started a document, carefully recording every message, every offer of testimony, every piece of the pattern. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about stopping a cycle of violence that had been allowed to continue because of wealth and influence. At midnight, Daniel showed up at Jessica's door. I heard the doorbell, then his voice. Jessica, please, I need to talk to Sarah. I need to explain. Jessica's response was firm. She doesn't want to see you. You need to leave. This is between me and my wife. Your wife has a restraining order pending. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police. I hadn't filed for a restraining order yet, but Jessica's bluff worked. I heard Daniel's footsteps retreat, then the sound of his car starting, but he'd left something. Jessica brought it up to me. An envelope with my name on it in Daniel's handwriting. Inside was a check for $100,000 and a handwritten letter. Sarah, please forgive me. I was wrong. I should have stood up for Emma. I should have stood up for you. My family has too much control over me, and I let them cloud my judgment. Take this money. Use it for Emma's medical care, or whatever you need. I'm begging you to give me a chance to make this right. I love you. I love Emma. Please don't destroy our family over this. Daniel, I stared at the check. $100,000. A fortune. Enough to start over somewhere new, to pay for therapy, to cushion the financial blow of what was coming. But it was also a bribe. A softer version of his father's offer, wrapped in apology and love, but still fundamentally the same thing. Money in exchange for silence. Money in exchange for letting the Mitchell family avoid consequences. I tore up the check. Jessica watched without comment. When I finished, she swept the pieces into the trash. Good. You can't be bought. He said he loves Emma, but he didn't fight for her when it mattered. He didn't protect her. Love isn't words, it's actions. And his actions told me everything I need to know. The next morning, Officer Morrison called. Mrs. Mitchell, we interviewed Brandon and Brett yesterday evening. Their stories don't match. Brandon claims Emma attacked them first. Brett claims she fell while they were playing. Neither story is consistent with the injuries or the witness statements we've collected. What happens next? We're recommending charges be filed. Given the severity of Emma's injuries and the evidence of deliberate assault, the district attorney is looking at juvenile assault charges for both boys. There's also the matter of the adult's failure to render aid and the attempted cover-up. My heart pounded. Charges against Patricia and Marcus, too? That's being discussed. The attempt to prevent you from seeking medical care could constitute child endangerment. The subsequent offers of money to make this go away could be witness tampering or obstruction of justice. This is bigger than just the assault now. After the call, I sat in Jessica's kitchen trying to process what was happening. The Mitchell family's perfect facade was cracking, but I knew they wouldn't go down without a fight. Amy arrived that afternoon, pulling into Jessica's driveway in her practical sedan. She carried a briefcase full of documents and a determination that matched my own. We sat at Jessica's dining table, going through everything. The medical evidence is overwhelming, Amy said, spreading out Dr. Chen's photographs. The witness statements corroborate your account. Eleanor's testimony is particularly damaging because she's one of them. Her statement that Patricia explicitly asked her to lie is evidence of obstruction. What about Emma? Will she have to testify? Possibly. The court usually tries to avoid traumatizing child victims further, but her testimony might be necessary. We can request accommodations, closed courtroom, videotape deposition, therapy support. The thought of putting Emma through more pain made me nauseous, but the thought of letting this go, of teaching her that powerful people can hurt others without consequences, was worse. I also need to talk to you about Daniel, Amy continued. Has he tried to contact you since you left the party? I showed her the letter and the torn-up check. Amy's expression hardened. That's evidence. The check, the letter, all of it shows consciousness of guilt. They know they're in trouble and they're trying to buy their way out. I'm filing for divorce. Amy nodded. I expected that. We'll file this week. I'm recommending you seek full custody with supervised visitation only. Given Daniel's willingness to prioritize his family's reputation over Emma's safety, he's shown himself to be an unreliable parent. He'll fight it. Let him. We have documentation of his failure to protect Emma, his threats about consequences, his attempt to prevent medical care, his family's pattern of covering up his nephew's violence. No judge is going to give him unsupervised access after all this. Over the next week, I watched the Mitchell family's world begin to crumble. The story leaked to local media, not through me, but through someone at the hospital or police department who recognized the Mitchell name and saw a story worth telling. Prominent family under investigation following child assault allegations. Read the headline in the local newspaper. The article was careful, avoiding names because of the minors involved, but anyone in our social circles would recognize the details. Patricia's charity board requested her resignation. Robert's business partners started distancing themselves. Victoria's society friends stopped returning her calls. The Mitchell family, so carefully constructed on a foundation of reputation and status, found that foundation crumbling when exposed to the light of truth. Daniel moved out of our house and back to his parents' estate. estate. The divorce papers were served. He signed without contest, knowing he had no leverage, no moral high ground to stand on. But the most significant change was in Emma. The day after we left the hospital, she had nightmares. She woke up screaming, reliving the attack. But as the days passed and she realized she was safe, that I had chosen her, that justice was being pursued, something shifted. One evening, as I tucked her into bed in Jessica's guest room, Emma looked up at me with those clear blue eyes. "Mommy, you're a protective mother. Where did you hear that term, baby?" Aunt Jessica told me. She said, "You're protecting me from bad people, even when the bad people are family." I kissed her forehead, tears streaming down my face. "Always, Emma, I will always protect you, no matter what." "I know," she said simply, with the absolute trust of a child whose mother had proven herself worthy of that trust. That night, as Emma slept peacefully for the first time since the attack, I sat in Jessica's living room with a glass of wine and my laptop. Amy had sent me the preliminary custody evaluation. It was damning for Daniel. Subject has demonstrated pattern of prioritizing extended family relationships over child's welfare. Subject's failure to intervene during documented assault, subsequent threats to spouse regarding consequences of seeking medical care, and participation in attempted cover-up of child abuse indicate serious judgment impairment regarding child safety. Recommendation: supervised visitation only until subject completes parenting classes and family therapy. I closed the laptop and looked out the window at Jessica's quiet suburban street. 3 weeks ago, I had been Mrs. Daniel Mitchell, wife of a successful businessman, member of a prominent family, living in comfortable denial about the dysfunction surrounding me. Now I was Sarah, protective mother, survivor of family betrayal, warrior for justice. The transformation had been painful, necessary, irreversible, and I wouldn't change a thing. The Mitchell family had hurt my child and expected me to stay silent. Instead, I had chosen truth over comfort, justice over status, my daughter over everything else. They were about to learn that some battles can't be won with money. Some fights require courage they didn't possess. Some mothers can't be intimidated, bribed, or broken. I was one of those mothers, and their perfect lives were about to end. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late May. I dressed carefully that day, choosing a simple navy dress that conveyed seriousness without drama. Emma stayed with Jessica, spared from having to face the courthouse, at least for now. Amy met me at the courthouse steps. Her expression was grim but confident. The Mitchell family brought Lawrence Blackwood and 2 associates. They're trying to intimidate us with numbers. Don't let them. Inside the courtroom, I saw them for the first time since that terrible Saturday. Daniel sat between his parents, his face pale and drawn. Patricia wore designer black, as if attending a funeral for her family's reputation. Robert's jaw was set in that familiar, stubborn line. Marcus and his wife Diane sat behind them. Brandon and Brett, mercifully absent. Victoria was there too, her usual polished appearance slightly frayed. She wouldn't meet my eyes. The juvenile assault charges against Brandon and Brett were being heard separately, but this hearing was about the attempted cover-up, the obstruction of justice, the witness tampering. This was about the adults who had tried to bury the truth. Judge Sarah Williamson entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for zero tolerance for privileged defendants who thought themselves above the law. I felt a small flutter of hope. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Michael Torres, was young but fierce. Amy had told me he'd built his career on taking down powerful families who abused their influence. He'd specifically requested this case. "Your Honor," Ada Torres began, "this case represents a disturbing pattern of a family using wealth and status to cover up child abuse. The evidence will show that Patricia Mitchell explicitly threatened the victim's mother against seeking medical care, that Robert Mitchell attempted to bribe the victim's mother into silence, that Daniel Mitchell threatened his wife with consequences for protecting their injured child, and that Marcus Mitchell coached his sons to lie to investigating officers." Lawrence Blackwood rose, his expensive suit and confident demeanor designed to project authority. "Your Honor, my clients are upstanding members of this community. Mr. Robert Mitchell has donated millions to local charities. Mrs. Patricia Mitchell serves on 4 charitable boards. These are not people who would cover up child abuse. This is a case of a troubled marriage, a vindictive ex-wife, and a tragic accident being weaponized for financial gain in divorce proceedings." I felt Amy's hand on my arm, steadying me. The lies were starting already. The narrative that I was the problem, the troublemaker, the vindictive woman destroying a good family. Ada Torres smiled coldly. "The defense mentions financial gain. Let the record show that Mrs. Sarah Mitchell has refused 2 separate cash offers totaling $600,000 to drop this case. She has torn up a check for $100,000 from her husband. Far from seeking financial gain, Mrs. Mitchell has rejected every attempt to purchase her silence." Judge Williamson made a note. "Interesting. Mr. Blackwood, your clients offered significant sums to make this case disappear." Blackwood shifted slightly. "My clients offered to cover medical expenses and provide financial support during a difficult time. That's not bribery, Your Honor. That's compassion. We'll let the evidence determine what it is," Judge Williamson said dryly. "Proceed." The next 2 hours were brutal. Ada Torres presented the medical evidence first. Dr. Chen testified via video. Her professional assessment devastating to the defense. The photographs of Emma's injuries appeared on the courtroom screens. I heard Patricia gasp, saw Robert flinch. They'd never actually looked at what their grandsons had done, never faced the reality of Emma's broken nose, fractured wrist, defensive wounds. Officer Morrison testified next, reading from her report. "The victim presented with injuries consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. The defensive wounds on her forearms indicated indicates she attempted to protect herself from assault. The pattern is inconsistent with a fall or accident. In my 15 years of law enforcement, I have investigated numerous child abuse cases. This was assault, not accident. Then came Eleanor's testimony. Patricia's former best friend walked to the witness stand with visible nervousness, but her voice was steady. Patricia called me the evening of the incident, Eleanor testified. She asked me to tell anyone who inquired that I saw Emma fall. She specifically said, "We can't let Sarah ruin the boys' futures over an accident." I told her I couldn't lie about what I saw. She became angry and hung up on me. We haven't spoken since. Patricia's face flushed red. Robert whispered furiously to Blackwood. Eleanor continued, "I saw Brandon strike Emma with a stick. I saw Brett laughing while Emma cried. When Sarah ran to help her daughter, Patricia and Robert immediately began spinning a story about Emma falling. They didn't check if Emma was okay. They didn't offer to call for medical help. Their first instinct was to protect Brandon and Brett from consequences. The testimony that broke the Mitchell family came from an unexpected source. Marcus's wife, Diane, took the stand as a prosecution witness. The courtroom buzzed with surprise. She looked terrified but determined. "Mrs. Mitchell," Ada Torres said gently, "please tell the court what you witnessed the evening of the incident." Diane's voice shook. After Sarah left with Emma, the family had a meeting. Robert told everyone to get their stories straight. He said if anyone was questioned, they should all say Emma fell while playing. Marcus was upset. He said his boys had told him the truth, that they'd been rough with Emma, but Robert said it didn't matter. He said the family came first, that we couldn't let this scandal ruin everything he'd built. "And what did you do?" "I stayed silent at first, but that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emma's face, the blood, her crying. I kept thinking about what my boys were learning, that violence has no consequences if you have money, that lying is acceptable if it protects your reputation. I couldn't let them learn that." Diane looked directly at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, but our sons need to learn that actions have consequences, real consequences, not the kind that can be bought away." Marcus's face was a mask of betrayal and rage. Patricia looked like she might faint. Robert's confidence finally cracked, his hand shaking as he took a sip of water. But Ada Torres wasn't finished. "Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence. Text messages between Robert Mitchell and Daniel Mitchell, sent the morning after the incident, before Mrs. Sarah Mitchell refused their financial offers. The messages appeared on the screen. Robert, how much do you think Sarah wants to make this go away? Daniel, I don't know, maybe 100K? Robert, start there. Go higher if you need to. We can't let this get to court. If it does, everything comes out. Daniel, what do you mean everything? Robert, Brandon and Brett have done this before. We paid off 2 families last year. If Sarah files charges, those families might come forward too." The courtroom erupted. Judge Williamson banged her gavel. "Order," but the damage was done. The admission was there, in writing. The Mitchell family had covered up previous assaults, had paid off other families. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern of violence and cover-up, enabled by wealth and status. Lawrence Blackwood was on his feet, objecting, arguing about context and privacy violations, but it was too late. The truth was out, displayed on screens for everyone to see. Judge Williamson called a recess. Amy pulled me into a small conference room. "This is better than we could have hoped for. Robert just admitted to paying off other families. That's conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice. Multiple counts." "Those other families?" I said, my mind racing. "We need to find them. They deserve justice too. Torres is already on it." The moment that text appeared, he had investigators pulling Robert's financial records. Every large payment, every sudden cash withdrawal. They're going to find everyone the Mitchells paid to stay silent. When court resumed, A.D. Torres made his closing argument. "Your Honor, this case is about more than one injured child. It's about a family that has systematically covered up violence for years, that has used money and influence to ensure their children never faced consequences. That has taught those children that assault is acceptable as long as you're wealthy enough to pay your way out of trouble. The prosecution requests that all charges stand, that bail be set appropriately given the light risk posed by defendants with significant financial resources, and that a full investigation be launched into previous incidents." Blackwood's closing was desperate, grasping at straws about reasonable doubt and circumstantial evidence, but his heart wasn't in it. He knew they'd lost. Judge Williamson took less than 15 minutes to deliberate. When she returned, her expression was granite. "I have reviewed the evidence presented today. The medical testimony is damning. The witness statements are credible and consistent. The text messages between Robert and Daniel Mitchell constitute admission of prior wrongdoing and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Most disturbing is the pattern this reveals. A family that has consistently chosen reputation over responsibility, image over integrity, wealth over welfare." She looked directly at the Mitchell family. "You had every advantage. Money, status, education, opportunity. You used those advantages not to build something good, but to ensure your children never faced consequences for their actions. In doing so, you created exactly the kind of entitled, violent young men you now see before you." Patricia was crying openly now. Robert's face was ashen. Daniel stared at his hands. "Patricia Mitchell, you are charged with attempted obstruction of justice and child endangerment. Bail is set at $50,000. Robert Mitchell, you are charged with witness tampering, attempted bribery of a witness, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and accessory after the fact to multiple counts of assault. Bail is set at $200,000. Marcus Mitchell, you are charged with accessory after the fact and coaching witnesses to give false statements. Bail is set at $75,000. She paused, letting the words sink in. "Daniel Mitchell, you are charged with attempted obstruction of justice and failure to protect a child in your care. Bail is set at $50,000. $50,000. All defendants will surrender their passports immediately. Trial dates will be set within 90 days. The gavel came down with finality. I sat frozen, unable to quite process what had just happened. Amy was squeezing my hand, whispering, "You did it. Justice is coming." But it was Judge Williamson's final words that broke through my shock. "Mrs. Sarah Mitchell, I want to commend you for your courage. Child Protective Services fail too often because family members stay silent, choosing loyalty over safety. You chose your daughter over your comfort, truth over convenience. Because of your actions, other victims will be found, other children will be protected. You did the right thing. Never doubt that." As the Mitchell family was processed for bail, as reporters flooded the courthouse steps, as my phone exploded with messages of support and congratulations, I felt something I hadn't felt since that terrible Saturday afternoon. Peace, not the peace of resolution. Not yet. There would still be trials, testimony, years of legal proceedings. Emma would still need therapy. I would still need to rebuild our lives from scratch. But it was the peace of knowing I had done the right thing, that I had been the protective mother Emma deserved, that I had stood up to powerful people who tried to intimidate me into silence. They had hurt my child and expected me to stay quiet. Instead, I had destroyed their perfect lives, exposed their crimes, ensured they would face real consequences, and I would do it again without hesitation. Because some things are worth fighting for. Some truths are worth telling. Some children are worth protecting at any cost. Emma was worth everything, and now the whole world would know what the Mitchell family had done to her. Justice had arrived, and it was beautiful. The trials began in September, 5 months after that devastating Saturday. By then, Adia Torres's investigation had uncovered 3 other families the Mitchells had paid off, 3 other children who had been hurt by Brandon and Brett, 3 other mothers who had been intimidated into silence with money and threats. Those mothers contacted me. We formed a support group, meeting weekly in Jessica's living room. Karen, whose daughter had been pushed downstairs at a playdate. Michelle, whose son had been locked in a closet for 2 hours during a birthday party. Rachel, whose daughter had been hit so hard she'd needed stitches. All of them had accepted payments ranging from $20,000 to $75,000. All of them had signed NDAs. All of them had been told by the Mitchell family that their children were being too sensitive, too dramatic, that boys will be boys. But NDAs don't hold up when they're used to cover up crimes. Each of those mothers broke their silence, stood before cameras, told their stories. The media coverage was relentless. The Mitchell family, a legacy of violence and cover-ups, read one headline. How wealth protected young predators for years, read another. Mothers break silence on pattern of abuse by prominent families' children, announced a third. The Mitchell family tried to control the narrative. They hired a crisis management firm. They released statements about seeking help for Brandon and Brett, about family therapy, about taking responsibility. But it was too late. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and it was damning. Patricia resigned from all her charity boards after being asked to leave. Robert's business partners dissolved their partnerships, unwilling to be associated with his name. Victoria's social circle evaporated overnight. Daniel was fired from his position at his father's company, which itself was hemorrhaging clients. The family's assets were frozen pending the criminal trials and the civil suits that followed. 7 families, including mine, filed lawsuits seeking damages not just for the assaults, but for the emotional distress, the medical costs, the therapy needed to recover from both the violence and the betrayal. The criminal trial for Patricia, Robert, Marcus, and Daniel lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the front row with Amy beside me. The other mothers joined me, a silent wall of solidarity that the Mitchell family had to face every morning. Emma testified. It broke my heart to put her through it, but Amy and the prosecution team prepared her carefully. The judge allowed her to testify via closed-circuit television, sparing her from facing the courtroom directly. Her testimony was simple, direct, devastating. Brandon hit me with a stick. It hurt. I tried to stop him, but he kept hitting me. Brett was laughing. I called for my mommy, but she was far away. When she came, my face hurt and my arm hurt. Grandma Patricia told my mommy to stop being dramatic, but I was really hurt. The jury watched the video in silence. I saw several jurors wipe their eyes. I saw the defense attorneys slump slightly, knowing there was no cross-examination that wouldn't make them look like monsters attacking a traumatized child. Brandon and Brett's separate juvenile trial happened simultaneously. Diane testified against her own sons, explaining through tears how she'd tried to get them help years ago. But Marcus and Patricia had insisted there was nothing wrong with them, that they were just spirited boys. I failed them, Diane sobbed on the stand. I let my husband's family convince me that their behavior was normal. I let them teach my sons that violence was acceptable. I'm their mother. I should have protected them from becoming what they are. The juvenile judge was less sympathetic than Judge Williamson had been. Brandon and Brett were found guilty of assault causing serious bodily harm. They were sentenced to 2 years in a juvenile detention facility, followed by intensive therapy and probation until age 18. Marcus and Diane divorced within a month of the verdict. She moved across the country with their sons after they completed their detention, determined to start over somewhere the Mitchell name meant nothing. The adult trial concluded in November. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Patricia Mitchell, guilty of child endangerment, guilty of attempted obstruction of justice, sentenced to 18 months in prison, followed by 5 years probation. Robert Mitchell, guilty of witness tampering, guilty of attempted bribery, guilty of conspiracy to obstruct justice, guilty of accessory after the fact to assault, sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Marcus Mitchell, guilty of accessory after the fact, guilty of witness tampering, sentenced to 2 years in prison. Daniel Mitchell, guilty of attempted obstruction of justice, guilty of child endangerment, sentenced to 1 year in prison, followed by 3 years probation. The courtroom erupted when the verdicts were ever read. I sat perfectly still, feeling the weight of 5 months of fighting, of testimony, of reliving trauma finally lift from my shoulders. It was over. Justice had been served. The Mitchell family's perfect lives had crumbled completely, and it was their own actions that had destroyed them. Judge Williamson had one final statement before sentencing. This case has exposed a rot at the core of how we think about wealth and privilege in this country. The Mitchell family believed themselves above consequences. They used their money not to do good, but to protect their children from facing the results of violence. They created monsters, then enabled those monsters to hurt other children without repercussion. She looked at each defendant in turn. Your wealth could not protect you from justice. Your status could not shield you from the truth. And your attempts to buy silence only revealed the depth of your corruption. You will serve your sentences knowing that your actions destroyed not just the victims' families, but your own. After the sentencing, I stood on the courthouse steps with the other mothers. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. But I only had one statement prepared. This case was never about revenge. It was about ensuring that no child would be hurt by the Mitchell family again. It was about teaching our children that violence has consequences, that truth matters more than reputation, that justice exists even for the wealthy and powerful. Today, we got that justice. Today, our children learned that their mothers will fight for them, no matter the cost. Karen added, we were silenced by money and fear. But Sarah showed us that silence only protects the abusers. Speaking up protects the children. We should have spoken up sooner. We'll never be silent again. The civil suits were settled out of court. The Mitchell family had no choice. Their assets were minimal after legal fees and fines, but what remained was divided among the victims. I used Emma's settlement to establish a college fund for her and to donate to organizations supporting child abuse victims. The house Daniel and I had shared was sold. I bought a modest townhouse near Jessica, close to Emma's new school, surrounded by families who knew our story and supported us without judgment. Emma's physical injuries healed. Her nose set correctly, though she'd always have a small bump where it had been broken. Her wrist regained full function after months of physical therapy. The scars on her arms faded to thin white lines, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. The emotional healing took longer. Emma had nightmares for months. She flinched when other children raised their voices. She developed anxiety about family gatherings, worried that someone might hurt her again. But with therapy, with patience, with the absolute certainty that I would always protect her, Emma began to recover. She learned that what happened to her wasn't her fault, that speaking up when someone hurts you is brave, not dramatic. That family who hurt you don't deserve your loyalty. On Emma's 4th birthday, we had a small party at Jessica's house. Just close friends, the mothers from our support group and their children. Emma wore a purple dress instead of yellow. She'd refused to wear yellow since that terrible day, and I respected that choice. As we sang happy birthday, I watched Emma's face light up with joy. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. The kind of joy that comes from feeling safe, from knowing you're loved, from understanding that the people around you will protect you. After the party, Emma climbed into my lap. Mommy, thank you for being a protective mother. Always, baby. That's my job. My most important job. Daddy wasn't a protective father, was he? The question hurt, but I'd promised myself I would always be honest with Emma, age appropriately, about what happened. No, sweetie. Daddy made some bad choices. He chose to protect other people instead of protecting you. That was wrong. Will I have to see him? Daniel's supervised visitation rights had been suspended pending his prison sentence. After his release, he would have to petition the court for any access to Emma, and I would fight it with every resource I had. Not unless you want to, and not until you're ready. If that day comes, I'll be right there with you. Emma nodded, satisfied. Then she asked, are Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert in jail? Yes, good. They should be. They hurt me too by not helping when I was hurt. The clarity of children, the ability to see truth without the complications adults layer over it. The Mitchell family hadn't just failed to protect Emma. They had actively hurt her by prioritizing their reputation over her welfare. A year after the sentencing, I received a letter. Patricia had written from prison, her careful cursive filling 3 pages. I almost threw it away without reading, but something made me open it. Sarah, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. Watching you fight for Emma, watching you refuse to be intimidated or bought, I realized something. You are the mother I should have been. The mother I could have been if I had prioritized truth over image, love over status. I failed Emma. I failed you. I failed my own sons by teaching them that reputation matters more than integrity. I failed Brandon and Brett by never holding them accountable. My entire life was built on appearances, and when reality crashed through those appearances, everything crumbled. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that you did the right thing every step of the way. You are the hero of this story. I am the villain, and I will spend the rest of my life knowing that and trying somehow to do better. Your mother-in-law no longer, Patricia. I read the letter 3 times. It seemed genuine. The self-awareness felt real, but it changed nothing. Patricia had shown her true character when it mattered. Words written from prison, after consequences had already been imposed, couldn't undo the damage she'd caused. I filed the letter away, not as forgiveness, but as documentation, as evidence that even the Mitchell family eventually had to face the truth about themselves. Daniel wrote too, multiple letters over the months, each one begging for another chance, promising he'd changed, insisting he could be the father Emma deserved. I never responded. His promises meant nothing. His actions had revealed his true priorities, and no amount of words could change what I knew about him. Emma was thriving now. She'd made new friends at her school. She loved art class and story time. She still had moments of fear, still sometimes woke up crying from nightmares, but those moments were becoming less frequent. One afternoon, as we walked home from from school, Emma asked, "Mommy, why did Brandon and Brett hurt me?" Because they were never taught that hurting people is wrong. Their family protected them instead of teaching them, so they kept hurting, getting worse and worse. But they're learning now, right? In the detention place? I hope so, baby. I hope they learn that violence has consequences, that they can't hurt people just because they're angry or bored. I hope so too, Emma said seriously, because if they don't learn, they might hurt other kids when they get out. The wisdom of a 4-year-old who had been forced to grow up too fast, who understood justice not as abstract concept, but as necessary protection for other children. That evening, I sat on my townhouse porch, watching Emma draw with sidewalk chalk on the small patch of driveway. She was drawing a family, a mother and a daughter, holding hands, surrounded by hearts. No father, no grandparents, no extended family, just the two of us. And that was enough. More than enough. My phone buzzed. A message from Karen. Support group tonight? My place? I texted back confirmation. The support group had evolved from trauma processing into genuine friendship. These women understood what I'd been through because they'd been through it themselves. We'd all chosen our children over comfort, truth over convenience, justice over family loyalty. We were the protective mothers, the ones who'd stood up, the ones who'd fought back, the ones who'd proven that wealth and status couldn't triumph over determined women defending their children. The Mitchell family had hurt my daughter and expected me to stay silent. Instead, I took her to the hospital, pressed charges, and watched their perfect lives crumble into dust. They were in prison, their reputation destroyed, their business ruined, their family fractured beyond repair, and Emma was safe, happy, healing. That was the only outcome that mattered, the only justice that counted. I had won, not because I'd destroyed them, though I had, but because I'd saved my daughter, because I'd taught her that she was worth fighting for, because I'd shown her that truth and justice exist, even when they're hard to reach. The Mitchell family begged for mercy they never showed Emma. I gave them exactly what they deserved, nothing more, nothing less. Perfect justice. 2 years have passed since that Saturday afternoon that changed everything. Emma is 5 now, thriving in kindergarten, her laughter filling our townhouse with the kind of joy that comes from genuine safety and unconditional love. The pink cast has long since been removed, her nose healed with only the faintest bump. The scars on her arms have faded to silvery lines that she barely notices anymore. The physical wounds healed much faster than I expected. The emotional healing took longer, as I knew it would. Emma completed 18 months of play therapy with Dr. Sandra Hughes, a child psychologist who specializes in trauma recovery. Through art and storytelling and gentle guidance, Emma processed what happened to her. She learned that violence wasn't her fault, that speaking up about abuse was brave, that family who hurt you don't deserve your protection. She still has occasional nightmares, still sometimes hesitates when meeting new children, assessing whether they might hurt her. But those moments are rare now, brief shadows that pass quickly instead of consuming her. Last month, Emma asked if we could get a dog. We adopted a golden retriever puppy from the local shelter, a gentle giant Emma named Sunny. She chose the name because, she said, yellow used to make me sad because of what happened, but now yellow makes me happy again. The healing wasn't just physical or emotional. It was about reclaiming the things trauma had stolen. The color yellow, the joy of family gatherings, the ability to trust that adults would protect her. Our support group still meets monthly. Karen, Michelle, Rachel, and I have become genuine friends, bound by shared experience and mutual respect. Our children play together, knowing they're in a safe space with mothers who will always prioritize their well-being. We started a foundation together, using portions of our settlement money. The Protective Mothers Alliance provides legal support, therapy funding, and advocacy for families dealing with child abuse by wealthy or influential perpetrators. In 2 years, we've helped 43 families fight back against people who thought money could buy silence. Karen runs the legal aid program. Michelle handles therapy referrals. Rachel manages fundraising. I coordinate media relations, using my experience with the Mitchell case to teach other mothers how to tell their stories without being intimidated. We've become what we needed when we were alone and scared and being threatened by powerful families. We've become the voice that says, speak up, stand firm, protect your child, and we'll stand beside you. The Mitchell family scattered like leaves in a storm. Patricia served 14 months of her 18-month sentence before being released for good behavior. She moved to Arizona, as far from Connecticut as she could manage while staying in the country. I heard she volunteers at a women's shelter now, though I don't know if that's genuine redemption or just another attempt to rebuild her image. Robert completed his 4-year sentence last month. He emerged from prison a broken man. His business empire collapsed, his reputation destroyed beyond salvage. He lives in a modest apartment, working as a consultant for a construction firm that doesn't know his history. The mighty have fallen far. Marcus served his 2 years and moved to Oregon, where Diane and their sons relocated. I heard he and Diane attempted reconciliation for the boys' sake, but it didn't last. The damage was too deep. Marcus now has supervised visitation with Brandon and Brett twice a month. Diane remarried to a therapist who specializes in childhood behavioral issues. Brandon and Brett completed their juvenile detention and intensive therapy. They're 12 now, living with Diane and her new husband, attending a school that specializes in children with behavioral problems. I don't know if they'll grow up to be decent men, or if the pattern of violence is too ingrained. I hope, for everyone's sake, that the consequences they faced were severe enough to break the cycle. Daniel was released after serving 10 months of his 1-year sentence. He completed his probation requirements, including court-ordered parenting classes and family therapy. 6 months ago, he petitioned the court for supervised visitation rights with Emma. I fought it. Amy argued that Daniel had proven himself an unreliable parent, that his failure to protect Emma demonstrated fundamental judgment impairment regarding child safety. But the judge ruled that Daniel had completed his sentence, fulfilled his probation requirements, and deserved an opportunity to rebuild a relationship with his daughter. The visitation had to be supervised by a court-appointed monitor, 1 hour per week, in a neutral location, with Emma having full veto power. If she didn't want to go, she didn't have to. The first visit, Emma refused. The second, she agreed, but asked me to stay in the waiting room where she could see me through the window. The third, she lasted 20 minutes before asking to leave. Daniel tried. I'll give him that. He brought age-appropriate toys, read her favorite books, asked gentle questions about her life, but the trust was gone, broken beyond repair by his choice to prioritize his family's reputation over her safety. After the fifth visit, Emma looked up at me with those clear blue eyes and said, "Mommy, I don't want to see Daddy anymore. He says he's sorry, but sorry doesn't fix what happened. Sorry doesn't make me feel safe with him. You don't have to see him, baby. I'll tell the court you don't want to continue visits." Will Daddy be sad? Probably, but that's not your responsibility. You don't owe anyone access to you, especially people who didn't protect you when you needed them. Daniel received the news through his attorney. He sent one final letter, addressed to Emma, but opened by me first, as the court order specified. "Dear Emma, I understand you don't want to see me anymore. I don't blame you. I failed you when you needed me most. I chose the wrong people, protected the wrong things, valued the wrong priorities. I can't undo that. I can't earn back your trust with visits or toys or apologies. I just want you to know that I love you. I always have. I always will. And if someday, when you're older, you want to talk to me, I'll be here. I'll wait as long as it takes. I'm so proud of the brave, smart, kind person you're becoming. That's all your mom's doing. She's the hero of your story. I'm just the person who should have been better. Love always, Dad." I filed the letter with the others. Maybe someday, when Emma is grown, she'll want to read them. Maybe she'll reach out to Daniel, give him a chance to be part of her life. But that will be her choice, made as an adult who understands the full context of what happened. For now, we're building a life without the Mitchell family. A life where Emma's safety and happiness are the only priorities that matter. Victoria reached out last month. A brief email, carefully worded, probably reviewed by an attorney. "Sarah, I know I have no right to contact you. I know I was complicit in what happened to Emma, in the cover-up, in the family's pattern of protecting reputation over truth. I'm in therapy now, working through how I became someone who valued appearances over integrity. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that watching you fight for Emma changed something in me. You showed me what real maternal love looks like, what courage looks like. I'm trying to be a better person. Not for you. I'll never be able to make amends to you, but for myself and for any children I might have someday. Thank you for being what our family should have been. Victoria." I didn't respond. Whatever journey Victoria was on, it was hers to walk. I wasn't interested in facilitating anyone's redemption arc. My energy was for Emma, for our support group, for the families we were helping through the foundation. Last week, Emma came home from school excited. "Mommy, we learned about heroes today." Teacher said heroes are people who do the right thing even when it's hard. "You're a hero, Mommy. You did the right thing even when your family was mad at you." I pulled her into my lap, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small body fit perfectly against mine. "You know what makes you a hero, Emma? You were brave enough to tell the truth even when people didn't believe you at first. You were strong enough to heal. And you're kind enough to still be gentle and loving even after people hurt you. We're both heroes," Emma decided. "A team. The best team." I agreed. That night, after Emma fell asleep, I stood in her doorway watching her breathe. Sunny was curled at the foot of her bed, a golden guardian. Emma's room was decorated with artwork she'd created, drawings of families and flowers and happy scenes. Not a single picture included the Mitchell family. They'd been erased from her world as completely as if they'd never existed. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, Mrs. Daniel Mitchell, uncomfortable in my marriage but unwilling to examine why, complicit in my own diminishment, accepting scraps of respect from people who didn't truly value me, afraid to rock the boat, to make waves, to demand better treatment. That woman died the moment Emma screamed. In her place emerged someone stronger. Sarah, protective mother. Sarah, warrior for justice. Sarah, founder of an organization helping other mothers fight back. The transformation had cost me everything. My marriage, my extended family, the comfortable life I'd been living, the illusion of belonging to the Mitchell dynasty, but it gave me something infinitely more valuable. Self-respect. Emma's trust. The knowledge that when it mattered most, I chose correctly. The certainty that I was the kind of mother worth having. The Mitchell family hurt my child and expected me to stay silent. Instead, I destroyed their perfect lives, exposed their crimes, ensured they faced real consequences. They're scattered now, broken, living with the permanent stain of their actions. Some, like Patricia and Victoria, might genuinely be working toward redemption. Others, like Robert, are simply serving out their punishment, waiting for their past to fade, but they'll never escape what they did. The internet remembers. A simple search of their names brings up article after article about the assault, the cover-up, the trials. Their legacy isn't the charitable donations or business success Robert worked so hard to build. It's child abuse and obstruction of justice. Meanwhile, Emma and I are thriving. We have a community that supports us, friends who value honesty over image, a life built on truth instead of appearances. Last week, one of the mothers we helped through the foundation sent me a message. "You saved my daughter by saving yours, by showing us that fighting back is possible, that justice exists even for people who think they're above it. Thank you for being brave enough to go first." That message, more than any verdict or settlement, confirmed that everything I'd done was worth it. Emma wasn't just my daughter. She was the catalyst for protecting dozens of other other children. Her trauma, terrible as it was, became the spark that ignited real change. If you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, know this. Your child's safety matters more than family loyalty, more than keeping the peace, more than protecting reputations or avoiding scandal. More than anything, document everything. Take photos. Get medical care from professionals who will create official records. Don't let anyone pressure you into silence. Don't accept money to look the other way. Don't prioritize your abuser's comfort over your child's welfare. Be a protective mother. Be a warrior. Be willing to burn down everything you built if that's what it takes to keep your child safe. The Mitchell family learned too late that some mothers can't be bought, intimidated, or broken. That some battles can't be won with money or status. That justice, when properly pursued, has teeth sharp enough to tear down even the most carefully constructed facades. They hurt my child. I destroyed their world. And I'd do it again without hesitation. Because Emma is worth everything. Every sacrifice, every battle, every uncomfortable truth. She's 5 years old, happy and healing, drawing pictures of flowers in yellow. And that's the only ending that matters.